Today on the Transplant Helper, we're going to be discussing together that infamous, inevitable transplant diet. What are some of the healthy choices you can make both in the kitchen as well as at the table to increase the probability of living a long life and living a high quality life healthy at the same time? If that interests you in any way, go ahead and stay tuned. Hey folks, welcome to Transplant Helper again today. My name is Jim Merle, and today we're going to be readdressing a subject I've already looked into several different times on the program. However, I've been viewing it from different perspectives, and that is the transplant diet, okay? And it really doesn't matter whether you're heart, lung, liver, kidney, pancreas, whatever. Eating a healthy diet that involves certain foods that you avoid and certain foods you attempt to take in on a regular basis is going to be important to your lifestyle. Probably right behind the medication that you take is probably going to be as important as anything else that you do. So I know it's always handy if we have open discussions about our diets and we help each other in giving tips and tools and recommendations as to what we ought to eat and not eat. Now, as a disclaimer, you, the one looking at this video right now, you sir, you ma'am, need to be consulting with your transplant teams, dietitians, that sort of thing, sitting down with them and paying attention, which is something I didn't necessarily do, but paying attention to what they're trying to teach you about your diet and trying to take suggestions as to the changes that you need to be making. And go with what they say above what I say or above what anybody who's going to be commenting below the video. And by the way, plan on getting ready to do that, to be typing and punching away right beneath this video. But when we comment below the video, we're oftentimes giving our opinions or what we like. I'm trying to give you some basic guidelines, and then you take those and you sit down with your transplant team and find out exactly what they need. Anyway, that's all the disclaimers set aside now. I want to give you two major things you need to be keeping in mind when it comes to your diets and how to maintain that healthy diet. Number one, it has to do with modification, okay? There may very well be in your life some modifications that need to be made when it comes to your diet that you weren't necessarily expecting. And I can speak from experience myself, living 38 years up into transplant. Basically, pre-transplant, my diet consisted of pizza, hamburgers, and chili dogs. I mean, that was my life. I ate a few other things, but I loved the basic three American foods, and I indulged in those. I took in high quantity and quality of, not quality, but quantity, if I can get that right, of those foods on a regular basis. And that wasn't necessarily the best choice I could make. Howbeit, let me tell you up front, my doctor told me and my wife plainly before my transplant, quote, his problem is not bacon grease, okay? I didn't have the clogged arteries and all. I was a congenital patient, so I wasn't dealing with some of the dangers that maybe some others are, but nonetheless, I could have ate a healthier diet. So I had to make some modifications to my diet after transplant, particularly in the kitchen and at the table, that would help me out. I just want to share a few of those with you, and then we'll get into the next point that really matters as much, okay? So number one, considering the basics, be sure, please, that you are both cooking and cleaning your food properly. And I know there are millions of times when we're on Facebook groups and such, when we get to arguing about, how do you like your steak? Should it be well, medium well, or rare? Would we get by if we ate that rare steak such as that? I'm not talking about getting by here. I'm talking about living under the best case scenario, under the best places we can in life. And that has to do with no matter what, it's always the safest bet and the best bet to thoroughly cook your meats, okay? Whether it's chicken or pork or beef, really the best option, especially you have to with the chicken and the pork or the fish, you need to be cooking that stuff and thoroughly cooking it. I'll try to put a link in the video beneath this video that'll give you kind of some guidelines as far as the temperature ratings and settings that you need to bring those meats up to in order for them to be fully cooked. And of course, you need to really stick by that. Now, there are some options out there that you just need to steer clear of, things like sushi. Yeah, it breaks some people's hearts, not mine. Things like probably caviars. There are different situations where you probably should avoid altogether. But as far as the basic meats, be sure they're thoroughly cooked brought up to temperature, that's your safest bet. Now, in addition to that, when it comes to fruits and vegetables, and by the way, those are probably some better options versus any of those meats, but especially when you're adding the fruits and vegetables to your diet, always be sure that they are thoroughly cleaned, okay? Thoroughly cleaned. I've got an entire video I'll link up here in the corners. Be sure to put it in the description below that has to do with to wash or to not to wash. Whether we need to be washing our fruits and vegetables, and by the way, here's the secret. You do need to wash them. And I'll be teaching you in that video how to properly wash them to be sure that you're really just getting away from some of those bacteria and different problems that are going on. Especially right now when we're having tons of recalls coming in the grocery stores, a lot of which lately have surrounded fruits and or vegetables. And so we really need to be aware of how important it is to properly wash our fruits and vegetables. And you need to be doing that. That's just some of the basics out of the gate. Now, when it comes to actual choices and the modification in our choices, there are basically a few guidelines for that. And it mainly has to do with avoiding salt, so low salt, low sugar, and as I say sometimes, changing your oils, okay? Now, I'm a salt guy, always have been, but since transplant, I've really had to learn different workarounds to that because I like flavor, and I just kind of have a palate that's ready for those flavors. And typically it used to be, salting when we cook, salting at the table. That's the way I did it. I've gotten where I never salt at the table. I do use a smaller amount of salt when I cook, but nonetheless, you need to really be avoiding as much sodium as possible. And by the way, a lot of that sodium doesn't come in the main meal. It comes in say the condiments that you're putting on top of the foods. It comes in the drinks that you're choosing to drink, soft drinks, that sort of thing. Maybe a higher content of sodium in that you're aware of, but really looking out for that. And especially when you decide that you're going to be on a lower or no salt diet, avoid certain things like salt substitutes. And I mean by that something that actually sits on the grocery store shelf and says salt substitute. Don't do that. Those things are not good at all. Most transplant teams will tell you right up front, do not do the salt substitutes. However, that's not to say that you can't substitute your salt. And by that, I mean, instead of choosing salt, maybe go with pepper or garlic or any other herb or spice nearly. Just trade that out for your salt. And it's an easy recommendation. Part of the whole Mrs. Dash line, they're all salt-free. There's no salt in them. Choose some of those Mrs. Dash formulas. Different ones of them are very tasty. You can add that to your food and really give it a real kick of flavor that maybe you hadn't before. And of course, you can cut up some vegetables, onions, garlics, that sort of thing in your food as you cook and give it a great flavor as well. But low salt, avoiding most salt, and do not do the salt substitutes, okay? Second to that, watch out your sugars. We can really take in way too much sugar way too quick. Again, in our foods themselves, especially processed foods, can have more salt and sugar than you would ever need. Your condiments, again, are a great problem right there. And especially here, when it comes to sugars, I think a lot of times what we drink, if we're involved in soft drinks, down in the South here, it's sweet tea. That's so tempting to us. You may not like sweet tea, but, I can't drink your brown water. But nonetheless, sweet tea, I pretty much gotten away from that. As a matter of fact, me and my entire family, we're water all day, every day. I rarely drink anything but water. And it's because I'm trying to avoid the sugars that are there in those drinks. And they're really just kind of packed away sometimes. So you have to watch out for that. And of course, you find sugars in everything. Read your ketchup bottles or whatever that's there. And you just kind of lighten up on that stuff and kind of cut that down as far as you can. And by the way, on the water note, I'm kind of jumping around on the water note, I drink water a lot because I'm making a trade out. I know that I'm not eating the healthiest, slice of pizza here, higher sodium, higher whatever, but I'm drinking water with that, and I'm being sure that I'm flushing really good, keeping my kidneys, my liver, whatever, flushed as best I can, and trying to cut down on the quantity. You can do the same thing with calories that way too. Drinking a lot of water has no calories. You might trade out a few calories because you're not adding 300 or 400 calories and all these milligrams of salt by drinking, say, a soft drink. So low salt, low sugar, and then change your oil, okay? That's the way I say it sometimes. Look out for oils that are a little bit healthier, that don't have the high fructose corn syrups in them. Is that one of those things? Maybe that's not right. Okay, I'm here at the end of this video. Did I actually just say that oil has high fructose corn syrup in it? What? Avoid those trans fats, that sort of thing. Go maybe for a canola or an olive oil or something like that. And even then, don't necessarily, just fry things up in oil. I'll mention that in just a moment. But avoid deep frying in oil whenever possible, because that's really going to help you to change out your oil, and that's going to keep your cholesterol a little bit better in balance. We need a little bit of that, but help to balance things a little bit better and just get away some of the fats, that sort of thing, while we're prepping food. Now, with that said, in addition to that, when it comes to prepping food, and this is again one of the specific questions I was asked, what type of meals do you eat? How do you prep your food? Let me give you the ladder you need to be climbing here. Number one, at the top of the ladder, you need to eat as much as possible baked foods, okay? Baked is best. That's the way to remember that. Baked is best. Right beneath that, you can grill food. Grilling meats, grilling vegetables, all that, generally pretty much healthy ways to go. So baking and grilling, and then finally frying at the bottom, okay? And think about it. You'll be at the bottom of the barrel if you fry a lot of your foods. And so if you got a choice of meats, maybe in a restaurant menu or what you're making in the kitchen at home or out in the backyard like we do a lot, choose baked, grilled, and then fried in that order, okay? But let me point out something to you that I really didn't know until I sat down so many times with dietitians and such and had one-on-one face discussions with them. Sometimes, be careful with this, sometimes the fried is healthier than the grilled just because of the sodium content. A lot of grilled foods, the great flavor that you're tasting there that's seared in, it's basically the salt that's been dumped on there, maybe soaked in a brine beforehand, and it's really gotten down in the meat. And so it's kind of hidden away and you're not noticing it. You're tasting it, but you're not noticing it as much. And sometimes frying a food may be much healthier. You could fry in a healthy oil and keep some of those things down and then not have all the salt added and maybe come out a little bit better. Be cautious with that, but that's just some of the basics. So bake your food, grill or broil your food, and then finally fry it if that's a last result. That's kind of some of the generalizations you can do along with that. Now, in addition to that, again, those fruits and vegetables I mentioned washing a little bit ago, wash them, thoroughly, but then eat them abundantly, okay? Stack as many of those fruits and veggies on your plate as you can. Make it your side items, make it the whole plate sometimes. Just really be sure that you're adding some fruits and vegetables. And by the way, me personally, you may be totally different. I'm not a Brussels sprouts and cauliflower and spinach kind of guy. I don't eat that stuff. Just never have had it. But as far as, beans, green beans, that sort of thing, peas, butter beans, we happen to like down here, corn, that sort of thing. Got to watch a few starches in there sometimes. But, those types of beans and different things, fine to eat. Watch the way you prepare them. Maybe you don't necessarily season them up with as much sugar and salt or whatever, or bacon fat, but, go ahead, eat them. Fruits and vegetables are going to be great. Now, that's all about modification. I probably talked way too long on that, and maybe you not hear me say this because you clicked off long ago. But second to that, moderation, okay? Use moderation when you eat. Again, I mentioned earlier, I used to eat some pretty healthy foods at times, but I would eat so much of that that it would cause me a problem. And so whatever you're eating, don't just overindulge. Take an opportunity to have several different meals during the day instead of trying to eat it all, say it, at the dinner table at supper time or something like that. Just modify the things that you eat, but then use moderation as you eat. And one of my good friends, Mike Willis, he says everything in moderation, including moderation. And that's a pretty good quote. You really need to be moderating whatever you eat and making sure that you're balancing things. And I think that's really the deal here. I've never felt condemned by my team for eating a cheeseburger, a chili dog, or a slice of pizza, or 10 slices of pizza sometimes. Shouldn't do that. But I've never really felt condemned or bad for that. What I have done, though, is always trade it out. If I ate a meal like that, say for lunch, supper was altogether different. It was on the other end of the spectrum. It would be a salad. It would be a plate of fruit. It would be something much more healthy than that. Tons of water going in during that time, and then making sure that that wasn't a common meal. That wasn't something that I ate on a regular, everyday basis. Again, I so much appreciate you watching this video. I know it's ran longer than I even expected, but thank you so much for that. If you've liked this video, if it's done something good for you, give it a thumbs up, a like if you like it. Be sure to comment below. I would love to hear the changes that you've made or modifications or whatever that you've made in your diet that has helped you to stay healthy as well. We're not having a real debate here, but nonetheless, please add your comments below. That's so encouraging. I get to read them. And by the way, I read every single comment. I reply to as many as I can. So I'll always see your comment at least, and most time reply. In addition to that, the whole community gains when you work together below these videos. And by the way, the comments, if you're on a smartphone, you need to scroll down past the suggested videos. Comments are below that. Comment right there. That would be a tremendous help. Thank you so much for joining me today. And until next time, stay stronger, friends.